Thank you, Danny. And back here now for another round of A Beer with Baron. And with me today is Kelly Richmond Pope, who, if I started to introduce you, I would never stop. But I'll be really brief. Speaker, author, professor, and filmmaker. And it's the last of those that really prompted me to want to reach out to you to have on this beer, and that is with this amazing documentary that you were the director of and the creative force behind, which is All the Queen's Horses. And it showed here in Oak Park at the Lake Theater, and I was one of many people, hundreds and hundreds, that saw it and was blown away by the amazing story, the power of story, as you said to us afterwards when you spoke to the audience. Can you first let us know how that came to be? A background in accounting, an accounting professor at DePaul, and a filmmaker. So, you fill in the blanks.
Well, I teach my accounting classes with a lot of film and TV. And so we'll show Shark Tank in class, or we'll watch The Profit, the show that comes on CNBC. And one day, I just had this crazy idea that I could probably make my own content. And so I go around the country with a crew and do interviews with whistleblowers, white-collar felons, and victims of fraud. And so I have all this video content that I use in my classes. And so when the Dixon, Illinois story hit the newspaper and I saw the headlines, you know, it was in the Chicago Tribune, city comptroller embezzled. At the time, it was $30 million. I was like, wow, this is pretty crazy. Yeah. And I could probably make a film out of this. So, famous last words.
So this was immediately, like, the thought of a movie?
Yeah, immediately, because it was the mix of all these crazy things. So, a small town, a large amount of money stolen, a very simplistic embezzlement scheme, and these crazy horses. Yeah. So, like, right. Who would think?
Sure, and then 53 million is even an understatement, probably, right, based on what you were saying. So.
Sure. So 53.7 is a conservative estimate based off of working with Jason Wadillo from the U.S. Marshal Service. There were years of bank records that were lost due to mergers and things like that. Not necessarily lost, but just due to companies coming together. And so that's the number that was settled on. So who knows? It could be 75 million. Who knows?
And this was Rita Crundwell, who towards the end is $5 million or more per year in a small town, 16,000 people, Ronald Reagan's birthplace. And so just in retrospect, it seems so mind-blowing that this could be happening. And in the moment, there's some serious problems that occurred. For you, as someone that's a forensic, what's the right term? Forensic accountant?
Yes.
So, like, that sounds pretty merging police work with power of numbers. What to you are some of the most blatant things that just should not have been able to go on for so long?
Well, I think, like you said, hindsight, you think, wow, this is a really crazy amount. How could it happen? But oftentimes, people just ignore and leave their financial person alone. And so, what was mind-blowing is some of the ways that she was able to justify getting money out of the accounts. For example, we're going to demolish a toll booth. Well, the city has nothing to do with the toll booths. Yeah. And so you would think if there was going to be an addition to a school or an addition to a hospital, that there would be some meeting notes. The city would have approved it. You would have talked about it in a council meeting. None of that happened. Right. So some of the things that were just crazy was the fact that someone could write a $250,000 check to American Express and no one at all raised the red flag.
So, switching gears a little bit, so here we are in the middle of 2018, approaching it, and the film has gotten so much acclaim already in the time that it's been out, festivals, rave reviews. How can people who are watching this sometime in the future, by that point, maybe it'll be on Netflix, so tell me about where people can see this now and where maybe in the future.
So right now, it's on iTunes, Google Play, DirecTV, Comcast Xfinity, and then a bunch of other platforms, like cable platforms, pay-per-view type cable platforms. In July 10th, we'll be streaming on Netflix.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so that's coming soon. So that's the next big announcement that I guess I just announced.
I think folks have heard of that, so Netflix, but certainly not this aspect. That's fantastic. So tell me, if you would, about you and your own background growing up. When was there this first indication, first of all, that you had this penchant for numbers and accounting?
So I took my first accounting class in high school. So I was a student at Jordan High School in Durham, North Carolina, and my business education teacher was this woman named Mrs. Farrow. And the way we taught that class was like you would run a business. And I was just fascinated by just the numbers aspect of running the business. And so I always felt that the person that knows the numbers is the most powerful person in the room. You know, the CEO is important, but if you don't understand numbers, then where are you? So
did you have someone in your family or someone close to you that triggered this?
Well, my father was a business school professor and a college president, and so he had a PhD in operations research from Purdue. And so because he taught business courses, he always encouraged me, Kelly, you should major in accounting. So I was the kind of kid that just followed with what my parents said.
So to use a number, he did a 180 of what so many and too many people do, which is to say to girls, well, girls aren't that good at math. You should go into... Now, I would never say that. I have a daughter who's quite good at math, and I just think that's just hokum. But to what degree do you feel like you are representing for an entire gender as you do this? Do you feel that kind of weight?
You know, I've never thought about it like that because I'm an academic first and an accountant second. And so there are a lot of female accounting academics. So I never thought about it that way. When I was in practice, I guess you could say I was passing the torch or running the race for the women, but I never thought about it like that.
Well, and you don't have to think about it, right? You can just do it. Actions are what's so powerful. So you're an Oak Parker now.
Yes.
That's a new designation. You moved from Hyde Park, I know, not too long ago. So what was it that prompted you and your husband and your 2 children and your dog to come to Oak Park?
So I'm originally from Durham, North Carolina. So I'm a Southerner at heart, and we lived in the city for a while and we liked it. But the ability to have my kids just go outside and sort of roam free, walk to people's houses, and then the schools. So those two things really made us say, maybe we'll make the move. And we were paying for private school. So, you know, between where could we go where we can make our money work for us better? And that accountant in me never goes away.
Oh, yeah. So. I'm sure a shopping trip with you must be quite interesting, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So now, do you have something right now that you're working on? I'm sure you do, but it's a matter of whether you can tell me, another film or another type of project.
So I love media. So I'm working on a podcast with a co-host of mine, a co-host friend who loves fraud and duped-like stories. So we're working on that. And I have some ideas for other films. It's hard. I mean, you have to raise money. Right. It's a very expensive thing to do. So
2012 is when the news broke about Rita Crundwell, right? And out in Dixon. How long did it take for you from that point to finishing the movie?
So from April 2012 until I would say May 2017. So a very long time. So
at a certain point, do you feel like, are you tired of it? Is it like mentally exhausting or?
You know, I'm not tired of it. I think it's sort of like teaching. You know, I teach managerial accounting, forensic accounting. I teach the same thing, but the audience, the students are different. So it's sort of like the film. You know, you go to different places and show it. Audience can be different, but the questions are typically the same. So I'm not tired of it yet.
So in this era of fake news and of a lot of questions about the legitimacy of any kind of information, what are you seeing in your students and in general in business in terms of, are people's skepticism, is it going up? Is this healthy for forensic accounting? What's the state of it?
I think people's skepticisms are pretty constant, and it's because once you establish a relationship with a person, you feel comfortable. So now that I know you, I don't have to verify if that's your actual email or if it's really you calling me. You know, so when we get comfortable with people, we tend to reduce the controls that we typically will use to protect us.
So a lot of psychology going on.
A lot of psychology, and you saw it in Dixon. I mean, people knew Rita. They knew her brother, her sister, her parents, her grandparents. So Rita would never steal from us. Like you don't think of anybody that you know in your immediate circle that would steal money from you.
Right. Well, it's kind of like, you know, about having systems in place so it's not personal, right?
But people think it is.
Yeah.
So people do think it is. So if you actually question some of the people that were close to you, they might say, well, Aaron, why are you asking me this? And so that is what I think allows people to manipulate others.
Right, and they use that, and that should be a red flag. If people are defensive about it, or trying to take the offense on it, so that's a signal. So, well, you know, we just skimmed the surface, but hopefully it's enough for people to be able to dig in more. I highly recommend All the Queen's Horses because it was truly, as a longtime reporter myself, you did a sensational job. And so thank you for coming on for the Spear with Baron, and much more continued success to you and to your family.
Thank you.